And here we are, live again. The Sports Across the Pond, together with Carlo De Marchis, Nick Cicero, and Paola Marinone. Hello, everyone.
Hello. Ciao.
Good morning. Ciao.
And good afternoon from London and from Europe, I guess. Today we're going to talk about...
We're all, Paola, we're
Go
all
ahead.
in different backgrounds. This is a real background. This is Officina Grandi Riparazioni in Torino. Nick is in a cave somewhere hidden in some part of the US.
Cave.
And you're in a whatever, the kid playground. What is that?
So this is it's from the office, and actually I think that this was done on purpose, very yellow. So even if I'm saying something extremely boring, you're not gonna fall asleep because it's too yellow. It's like, oh my god, it's like giving you
Right.
like you're getting high just because of the color. It's like you need to listen somehow. So I think it's done on purpose, 100%. All right. Cool. Welcome, everybody. And today we are gonna talk about the Wrexham story. And the title of the chat is "Content is King." And just a bit of intro. Then there's very interesting different point of views here today to discuss. We were together with Carlo. We were at Sports Pro Live last week. And one of the sold out panels was the one about Wrexham. I've been following a bit the story, like behind the scenes, trying to understand what was going on. Watched, of course, the series on Disney Plus, etc. And I was already finding very interesting. But then at that panel, I was like, okay, wow, this is a completely different approach to the whole thing. And I think there are very different learnings that I got from that, starting from it's an entertainment play and sport is part of an overall entertainment to get into global audiences, really starting from America and European and going global from day one, which again was extremely interesting. And the whole story that they built up and that they are building, because that's a story to stay. It's not something that's like a one-off coming up. I thought it was really outstanding, and that's why also they won and they're now in the EFL, and that's definitely a very important part. But I think that from an industry perspective, there are very many different learnings that I would suggest to really look very closely to. So that's why we're here talking about that today.
Yeah, I agree. It was it was very crowded, possibly because of the fact there are these two Hollywood stars behind it. It was really early morning, if I remember well. The room was packed. We were in front row as always, me and Paola. And I think just wanted to start from a bit of the artifacts, especially as we are across the pond, so Europe, UK, and US. The league system for football, soccer in the UK is Premier League, then 3 levels of EFL, English Football League, League 1, 2, and then there is first the Championship, then League 1 and League 2, and the last one is of the fifth is National League. So Wrexham went from National League to League 2 this next season, which is still very far from the Premier League. But, the media, I just don't want that we get confused that they're getting closer. Like, yeah, they're getting closer, but they're still super far from the top league. On the other end, the panel had 2 people. I think it was a very great panel managed by Nick Meechan. First, Humphrey Kerr, coming from basically Hollywood in the area. So he was brought in as the executive director of the club, clearly coming with no previous football experience. On the other end, Sean Harvey, which was also there, is a football executive from England, chief executive of the English Football League, and was also the CEO at Leeds United. It was also at Bradford City, which is, by the way, where part of my wife's family is coming from, close to Leeds. And he was a bit, people were not so sure about when he was really appointed there. But in the end, I mean, the fact that they were promoted, it's possibly the one thing about the story that is about football, it's they were promoted. That is massive in terms of validating. I think the story could have been the same, but again, in sport, there is a big difference. If you win, it still makes a difference, I guess. Sorry, I started the monologue. Paola, Nick, back to you.
No, I mean, I was not able to join the Sports Pro Live event this year, but I did watch the Wrexham series this week in preparation for our call, and I did watch the interview this morning that Nick posted. I thought it was really great, and I have lots of thoughts on this, but I think what's the first thing that I want to mention, and it's just my personal point of view, is that what I really love about this story is that we're starting to see more of this happen. Is we're seeing a huge turnover in generations, and I'll go on a short monologue, Carlo. So I monologue too, but really, like, we're going to have this huge turnover of age in all facets of the world, right? We see, it's been reported there's going to be a huge generational shift in wealth as people start to pass that on to the next generation as they get older. So like the boomers are kind of aging out, and we're seeing this next wave come in, and that's going to touch all facets of the world. And in the world of sport, I think it's really interesting because you have typically you have a lot of old wealthy white people that are the owners of clubs, and Rob and Ryan are definitely a couple of wealthy white guys, but they're a lot younger and they're a new type of owner. If you think about outspoken club owners here in the States, I think Mark Cuban is probably, one of the better examples of owners that we have right now. And we don't really have too many other shining examples. I mean, you could probably call out all the great things that they do, but like in the grand scheme of impact, being able to start from scratch and build a club, I think it's really unique. And so that giant turnover of age is going to trickle down in all facets of sport. And what I really love about this story is basically able to see a brand new model with a new generation kind of built from scratch. So this really blending of old and new culture and sport in the way that they're building this basically rebuilding this brand from scratch.
Well, definitely there is a complete rebranding. There's no doubt about that. And actually starting from it's like building a whole new one. And actually, I wanted to go through before giving a bit of what I learned there. I wanted to give a bit of a context in terms of the story. If anybody doesn't know it, maybe everybody knows it already. So I'm going to be quick, but just to recap what happened there. So they purchased Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney. I hope I pronounced it right. I'm sorry about that. Pronunciation is definitely not the perfect one. They bought the Wrexham AFC for $2.5 million. But before doing that, which I think that's very interesting, before having bought that, they already signed with for a documentary to be broadcasted. So it was all that's actually where it did start. So it was about them learning soccer. They had no clue what soccer/football was, so they really had to learn the whole thing. Got passionate about that. They were actually looking at the story part of it, so that was a very interesting look at like starting from the content and the story and the distribution of the story. That was the very starting point, and then they built everything on top of that. So starting from the documentary, and then they bought Wrexham. It could have been other cities, but there was a brilliant combination of things, being a city with a lot of history with football, like great community, like big opportunity for an upside in terms of growth, and many different things. So, and then from there, like in literally like no time, like in 3 years, they got more than 1 million social media followers. Which we're not talking about a Premier League club, so that is going from 0 to 1 million. No, not zero, but still, like, we're talking very low numbers. They multiplied by 3 the ticket sales, and they got very big sponsors like TikTok, Expedia, and others. So this is what we're talking about. That's the origin of the story. So starting from the content, the distribution, and another thing that I found extremely interesting from a business/media perspective is that they started from the audience and distribution. They already have the audience in the US, and now they are actually then going back, for example, with the summer tour. They're going to the US to engage with the audience over there, and they already have the audience as well here in the UK and in Europe, which is very difficult. So usually if you're starting from sport, then you try to expand somewhere else, and they are starting from content distribution, and then they are expanding from there, which is a completely different point of view. So I thought that was a very interesting part of it, together with the size, because it starts very small, but it's expanding. And winning on the pitch is definitely important, but I do agree with that with Carlo. But I think that still is in this case, it's particularly part of the story. It's a very important part, but it's still part of the story, not the story. Correct me if you disagree.
No, I don't. I think so. Few things. One, you mentioned the US tour. They organize. Sorry, I don't remember. It's City or Chelsea. I don't remember. They organize games with big teams. So they're organized in the US
United
tour.
And Chelsea.
United, sorry, and Chelsea. So they organized to have this funny, I guess, matches with top Premier League clubs, which is you combine the power of the brand and entertainment and the US owner with the big clubs. So it's a combination, and it would be nice to see who brings value to whom, because it would be obvious. Say, okay, big club plays a small club. It's obvious. In this case, I'm not sure. Maybe the celebrities win. I don't know.
Every game is going to be a big event. We were talking, when we talk about the Kings League, once again, on our mission to mention Kings League in every single episode.
We always go back to that.
But the first
I have news.
About, the event part of that, right? Like how many people they were able to get to pack the stadium, the party that was there, all of the different activations that they're going to do. I think you're going to see the same thing here in the States. Everything is going to be just a giant festival of people who love football, right? You'll have those diehard fans. You'll have new people that are in the areas, the people that want to see like the big name teams who probably haven't heard of Wrexham, and then you'll have this mix of audiences will have heard about it. I think it's really, really awesome. And the one thing that I thought was interesting watching the Sports Pro interview this morning was just the fact that a lot of their deals are not even up until this summer. So aside from, kind of starting off with signing a production deal, which, is pretty common if you get to Ryan Reynolds and Rob Stature, they're signing shows left and right, it looks like. So, it's really interesting, but what they're able to do is now all of this attention that they haven't even been able to like maximize that revenue, right? This event series and this match is going to be the same thing. But when those rights come back up, when they have new sponsors that they're going to be re-signing, I think it's going to be really interesting because once again, you do have the power of that social, to Paolo's point. So it's really neat. Carlo, what was your news? Sorry.
Yeah. So you mentioned Kings League, not me. So I just read today that they signed a broadcast rights deal in Spain, not with Mediaset. So that's another, if you want, quite fun improvement in what you're doing, I guess. On the other end, I was checking. So back to the session at Sports Pro Live, I was trying to summarize. And I think it was what he was talking about is obviously the story of America. I think the documentary was mentioned every 1 minute, more or less. Second, the story was about American soccer, blah, blah, blah. The third one was the community. They put a lot of emphasis on the fact that I think they had to do it, but I think it was quite authentic of how this, obviously a small city, I don't want to say meaningless, it's bad. But a small city with not a big history or anything special that gets all this attention, and how this can bring back value into the community, and the community generates more value for the brand and the club. Paola shared the social numbers, and I know Paola loves numbers as we all do. I was checking just live. Sorry, I have to use my phone. TikTok is 1.3 million, Twitter is 500,000, and Instagram, I just checked, is 880,000 followers. So, wow. Which is double what I found in an article of 1 month ago, to be honest.
Yeah.
That's why I'm
saying. And just for context, the average Premier League team Yeah, the average Premier League team has an average of 3.2 million. This was at the end of last summer when we did
Global.
So
Global.
the average Premier League team has cross-platform 3.2 million average cross-platform followers. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok. So
yeah, I didn't count
many
some of the platforms, so we're there.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So on social media, they're basically competing with the Premier League. So they're already in that league, to be honest. I mean, possibly not on the field, but not on the pitch. But it's definitely on the social media. They are there, and that's where like the big revenue, like not just the social media, but the because they already have the audience. Then it's a matter of monetizing the audience. So that's really where the money is going to come from. It's not about the money from the league and the TV rights. That's another thing that is going to be very interesting to see how it evolves, because TV rights is going to be like there's going to be a lot of discussion. I bet.
No, you're right. You're right. One of the big thing. Oh, sorry, Nick. One of the big thing that they mentioned that is most possibly business-wise the most intriguing, and it's a bit sophisticated, especially for American, is the fact that they were not allowed to. There was a huge discussion and debate, and now this is moving, even if they went out of that league. So they basically couldn't understand why they couldn't show the game. So people were not allowed to see the game because who owned the right didn't broadcast them. And that's like, it's a huge discussion. This is also impacting the next league and the next league, because in the UK, there is the 3 p.m. rule, because to avoid people not going to the stadium, they never allowed to broadcast games at 3 p.m., which is still there. In some case now they're breaking it. So that opened up a lot of discussion. And I think it's weird that it shouldn't be allowed. It shouldn't be allowed that you buy the right for something and then you don't show it, because that's not good for the sport in any case. And I understand the who buys the rights, they decide what to do with it. They buy the rights. But I think there should be a sport rule globally, or at least for all the countries that are there, that you cannot buy rights and then do not broadcast the sport.
Yeah,
that's my opinion, at least.
That's a whole topic for a whole nother show, I would imagine. Let's switch gears a little bit. So is this something that you guys think we will see more of? Is this a repeatable model, or is this kind of a wave of new owners that are coming in and thinking about new models to run clubs? Or is this kind of just a one-time thing?
So from my point of view, I think there's going to be way more approaches to this. If you think about Kings League, and I'm not going to go into Kings League per se, but I see a lot of similarities with the Wrexham case, because they're starting from the content, they're starting from entertainment, and the game is part of the entertainment, and that's a wider play. The big difference is that the Wrexham story started from a documentary from broadcasting and evolved in social media and then in the game, while the Kings League started very much like purely streaming. So it started completely on social media. So this is the slight difference. But I think that there are going to be different angles starting from, not from the pitch. So I think that's something that's going to evolve further on, because it's a bigger pie if you start from entertainment. If you're looking at not just on the pitch, you're competing on entertainment. You're not competing on sport purely. And at the end of the day, sport is competing with Netflix, or is competing with entertainment and games. And so it's not just sport per se. So now the boundaries are really loose. So there are going to be different approaches coming up for sure.
See, to be honest, it's a bit a wider theme. There is clearly, I see it in two ways. One, the owners. So focus on the owners. There is clearly, even in Italy, in Serie A, a new breed of owners, mostly coming from the US, but not only. I think the Premier League they're coming from another part of the world. Mostly, I saw a pie chart where most of clubs are European owned. I think there is a lot of different approach. to buy in a clubs and operate in a club. And that's connected to many aspects of what owning a club could mean. On the other end, I see, if you want, and again, if we take that story per se, the fact that more and more clubs understand, and we're in Torino, we also saw Mike Armstrong, the chief marketing officer of Juve in London. Clearly, they are trying to go beyond sport per se. They understood if they don't cross over to entertainment in general, they will lose interest from a young generation or not, or more, to be honest. I'm not sure it's only the young generation. On the other end, I think that having, to your question, original question, will this model of celebrities buying a smaller club be scalable? Could be, but every story needs a different story. Otherwise, it's boring. How many sport documentary you want to watch? Unless they bring something unique, it becomes, or unless you're specifically interested in, the sport, but that again, you stay in the deep fans, in the avid fans. You don't move the needle. I think it's more on one end, different approach to owning a club, and different approach to create engaging fans with the wider approach to content and whatever experience is interesting for fans. Yes, more creativity in creating fan engagement for sure. The specific of celebrity, smaller club and making a story, I don't think it's like scalable to the tens of hundreds. It becomes boring. That's my view. I'm not 100% sure, as always, of what I say.
Yeah. That makes sense. So maybe let's flip it on its head. In this case, one of the things that I think is really interesting is if you were to remove Ryan, but if you were to look at this as a brand marketer, effectively you had a documentary company that purchased a sports club to effectively market their documentary, and then now they want to do things beyond it. And I know that you guys there was also another panel with Relometrics, and I think it was Barcelona maybe, and Spotify. But there was the article that you had shared, Carlo, that I've talked a lot about, which was the whole big sponsorship of Spotify and not being able to really match up and actually acquire fan data and be able to match that back. If Ryan Reynolds could do this, why couldn't a brand go and do this? Why couldn't Spotify themselves go and just buy a team outright instead of sponsoring a team and install an ownership team as a giant content marketing play?
Paola, please.
Well, I would say why not? And I don't see that not happening, but it's a bit more complicated from a legal point of view and reputation, because if it doesn't win, it's going to be complicated from a brand perspective. But for certain type of brands, that could happen. I mean, I don't see.
I mean, Red Bull does it effectively right now, right?
So it's not impossible. So it's because you get the direct relationship then. So if it's a good match for the brand, then you have the pockets to do it for long term, so not for the short term, because it could be very risky in the short term. Then you can really expand further on. And because we're looking at, especially in sports now, the big deal is the casual fans, not really the core fans, but they're always going to be there. So it's really like widening up. So and then building the ecosystem around it, and then building the experience. Then there's a very wide scope that's a big brand. It should be really a massive brand that could actually get into it. So I would say, why not?
Right. I think so we should, not that we don't understand brand, but maybe having some deep brand expert would help. But I think it was interesting, the panel between Barcelona and Spotify. That's another whole session we could have. On the other end, I can imagine, so as you mentioned, Spotify, can Spotify buy a Serie B club in Italy and do something with it? Yes. Should they buy and be involved with a bigger club, like a Serie A club? Or I mean, football is divisive. You will have people that leave Spotify for Apple Music because they bought it. So I'm not sure. And again, I think there is it depends on the character of the brand. I could see some brand doing it, and I mean, the feeling would be good. Some other brand really not good if they do it in general. The document. So someone if I take a production house and buy a club and do something with it, great story, etc., I don't think it will work, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I
With
think
all
it's really interesting.
humility.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we started to talk about this before we jumped on live, right? Because you have JJ Watt, who just invested in Burnley,
Yep.
right? And then here across on this side of the pond, there feels like the options are more limited in lots of ways to do this. And not to say that they couldn't, but I think that there's you have to think about it in a certain type of way, right? Because in the States, you really have like pro sports, minor league, and college, and then you have what are kind of like the main tiers, right? And the minor leagues and the pros are very interconnected, right? A lot of these minor clubs, the player contracts are attached to them, and it's not like the Syracuse Chiefs are ever going to move up and play against the New York Yankees, right? So there's no real concept of that, but the community is the same. And I think maybe the community of college sports is probably more closer to the relationship that a community has with a football club in Europe. But one of the things that we see is like new leagues then starting to form, at least on our side, right? And we talked about this with Kings League and others, but like, you have the Rock taking over XFL, you have the USFL that's starting, you have more athletes investing in like pickleball. I know that there are new cycling leagues and things that are coming over here. The women's soccer league has sort of kind of taken this model with some varied investors, right? So it's just really interesting to get to see how this might take shape over the next few years, and also just in the same token, I'm kind of wishing, to me personally, right? There's so many communities that I feel like are just like Wrexham here in the States, especially me kind of coming from not a big city growing up and then living in big cities. There's tons of small communities that have a minor league team or have a smaller college team. And that's why it's really important to think about, like, yes, how can, if Ryan Reynolds can do something like that for Wrexham, there's hundreds of pro athletes that come from all sorts of towns all over the country right now in the US. Is there some way to kind of promote that angle of philanthropy or something to be able to promote sport? So I don't know, it just makes me think about like how many, how every city I wish could, every city who has a team that isn't a major pro sports team could think about the way that Wrexham is doing it. Is there, is your owner pulling their weight in your city? I don't know. I mean, my guess is maybe not, probably not. I don't know. Don't want to make that statement for everybody, but yeah, to me, it feels like a lot of cities that I know here in America are definitely could be hurting for this type of approach.
We also have a comment here from Alfonso. Yeah, so I guess he agrees that you need to be always on, like from a sport perspective, same as brands, really. Which, well, can't agree more, really. And it's basically the transformation from sports to lifestyle, like to media / brands, and it's really pushing on the brand side, like brands are already doing, like they are becoming lifestyle. It's more about the values rather than just the results. So Nike is not selling shoes; it's selling the concept of just do it. It's the concept of who you are and that you can achieve whatever you want in life, and it's the concept, really. So that's the brand side of it. The minute that brands and sports club get it, then they're gonna go way wider than the core fans that they already have, and they need to go deeper on the core fans, but they go wider on the lifestyle. Thank you, Alfonso, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. With this, just a bit of updates on what's next. So we are going to have every 15 days, so every other week, we're going to have another episode up to June, at the end of June. We already have some interesting topics to discuss about, being fast channels, being how, like, women's sports, and then we have real fans in sponsorship that Nick was mentioning briefly. If there is anything specific that you would like to discuss, we're more than happy to take it in consideration. And Thank you for joining us.
Ciao.
Bye.
Ciao, ciao. Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.